Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you're listening to the podcast. I say it all the time, and I will continue to say it. I really appreciate you for listening into the podcast. And because you've been such faithful listeners, you helped us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for that. And help us keep it going. Review, rate, subscribe to the podcast. And if you hear something today, which I'm sure you will, that strikes you, go ahead and submit a review. That'll really help us out. All right. So now, today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Today, I'm talking with Tara Landis. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Tara. After almost a decade of working with small businesses throughout North America, Tara returned to her birthplace of Vancouver, BC, and began looking for the same kind of job she had before, small business consulting with deep implementation. Unfortunately, or she says luckily, she couldn't find a company to work for that did what she loved to do. So she had to start her own company. So she founded BellRock Benchmark Inc. It's a Canadian management consulting firm that helps business leaders solve their most challenging problems and implement lasting organizational change. And in her work, Tara combines the best practices from psychology and business management. And she's been a trusted advisor to over 300 small business leaders. Welcome, Tara Landis.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Robin, and congratulations on the top 5%. That's really something. There's a lot of podcasts out here. So good for you for sticking with it and for doing such a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And
Yeah,
I'm glad you're here. And as we were talking just before, I'm really excited about delving into your story a little bit more. All
right.
right. Now, you heard me just read your sort of introduction bio, right? But tell
hmm
us in your own words a little bit about two things, who you are and then what you do.
Okay. Who I am? Well, I'm a mother and a wife and a daughter and a dog owner and a Canadian. And I love the work that I do, which is helping people, helping managers and leaders really develop the best that they can in their work lives. So really try to find people's strengths and accent them even further so that they become all that they can be, that they live their potential.
Yeah, that sounds you and I are in alignment with our work,
Mm,
our respective work. So, but
yeah,
how'd you come to do this? I know we just heard
yeah.
that you were looking for, but let's start. Tell that story.
Well, we can even go back further. So there I was working in telephone sales, selling computers and computer products for a Fortune 500 company. And I knew that that was not my fate. I didn't even really understand what I was selling, to be honest. So I was going to go back to school, and everyone always thought I should be a lawyer. That was what people told me. You should be a lawyer. You should go to law school because you argue a lot. So I went down that path and I wrote the LSAT and I did very well on the LSAT, if I do say so myself. And then I met a lawyer because I'd never talked to anyone about what lawyering was about. And the lawyer said, "Do you want to work 80 hours a week making 40 grand a year?" And I said, "No, I don't." And so I went and did an MBA instead. And I went and did the MBA. I was very young. I was 26 when I graduated. And I was quite intimidated by the job market. I went to a reasonably good school with some very talented people around me, most of them older than me with much more involved experience than I had had. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to do finance, didn't like that. And I knew I didn't want to be in a big company because I tried that and it just wasn't for me. I think it's back to that arguing thing again. And so I found this small business consulting firm and they were hiring. And I thought, oh, that'd be great. I'll just go, it'll be like a paid internship. And I'll get to go to all these different little businesses and see all the possible jobs and all the possible industries. And I'll figure it out from there. So I took that job, and the first company I worked with was a cardboard box manufacturing company. And then I went to an office refurbishment company. And then I went to a company that ruggedized Toshiba laptops to work in industry, like out in the field. And then I went to a general contractor. And everywhere I went, all the people, I mean, the industries were different, but the people were even more different. And I just got really addicted to all these different stories and these different people. And it turned out that in small business, the stuff I knew how to do was like brain surgery to them. The stuff they know how to do, I had no idea how to do any of that stuff, but I actually thought my stuff was pretty easy. And so I really enjoyed going in and helping them with these tools that they didn't necessarily have, putting them in place in their company, and then leaving. I really liked that it was a project and the project would be over and I could go. And so that was really fun for the first year. But then after that first year or so, I started going back to the old clients that I'd had. And, if I went from here to there with them, when I left, they went from there, like, sky's the limit. And I became addicted to that feeling. I was completely addicted to going back and seeing the growth and the amazing thing that they'd done. And it didn't have to be growth, by the way. I mean, it really depended on what their goals were. Sometimes people wanted to take a vacation. Sometimes they wanted to be able to sell the business. It didn't matter what the goals were, but to be a part of helping them at that foundational level get to those goals was really rewarding for me. And I just fell in love with it. And so I'm still doing that today.
I love that you kind of centered it all around what your gifts or strengths are, um, the thing that was easy for you, but hard
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. And I love that because I also teach that in my own work about one of my principles is that centralizing your natural abilities. So I
Hmm.
love that. Now let's go back a little bit though. You
Okay.
talked about, okay, when you found out what law was all about, you're like, no, that's not for me. Definitely not. And then you said, okay, and then I just went into an MBA. Why an MBA? Did you think about it? Or like, was there something about an MBA that resonated with you? Or did somebody say this is the best, the next best thing if you're not going to do law?
I mean, honestly, I wish I could tell you I was very purposeful throughout my whole career. I wasn't. It sounded like fun. Uh, I do like business. I've always liked business. I knew I wanted to have, a real career, not just a job. I'd had jobs. That wasn't for me. It just seemed, honestly, I was just hiding out in school. I mean,
Yeah,
back then it didn't cost quite as much as it costs now, and you could hide there for a while and just learn things. And my favorite thing to do actually is learn. My favorite thing to do is go to school. When I retire, I will go and do a whole bunch of degrees. I really enjoy learning. So it was a way to hide out. That's
yeah.
what I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you and I have that in common. Love learning. Love
Yeah.
learning. But I think you said something that's important that you might be overlooking. You said because it was fun. You thought
Yeah.
an MBA might be fun. Not everyone would think an MBA is fun. So that what that means, that tells me you had some interest, whether you were conscious of it or not. You had some interest. You said you had interest in business
Yeah.
because it sounded like it was fun. So you
Yeah.
already sort of somewhere knew that there was going to be something you might like in there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely had an interest in business.
Yeah.
And I'll also say the program I went to was a case-based program. So instead of having to study and memorize, it was all about talking things through. I knew that that's where my strength was in speaking about things and talking through issues. Again, back to that argument stuff. But I got to tell you, the real thing that attracted to me to the particular program I went to had nothing to do with the program itself at all. They had a student run initiative where they would go and teach business in the former Soviet Union. And so the wall had fallen. This was the year 1999. And so I got to spend a month in Minsk, Belarus, and a month in Dnipro, Ukraine, and teach business to people there. And that was the main reason I chose that program, which has nothing to do with the formal education at all. But it was definitely a seminal experience for me.
Yeah, and definitely I would say educational, even though it's
Yeah. Oh,
outside of the
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the point of it. Yeah, that's wonderful though. So you
Yeah.
knew there was something about that you knew.
Hmm.
Is there something because we just mentioned both of us that you said, yeah, you kind of like business. how'd you know? Like, was there something in your experience that let you know you liked business?
I think
Had you,
my family always, we talked about that at the dinner table, and my father was an executive, and um, um, there'd been a long history of sort of not family business. We're not in family business, but just people working and getting, that's just sort of what you did. You went and got a career. That's what you did. So that's what I had to do too.
yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything in the experience of little Tara who is anywhere resembling what you're doing now? Is there anything that looks like some connection, some early seeds of it?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was a very, very shy kid, and I'm an only child. And when I think I was about 6 years old, and we moved houses, moved to a new neighborhood. It was the middle of summer, and so I had no friends in my little neighborhood, and I had no siblings to play with. And so I wanted to find friends. But I was really shy. So what I did is I took my mother's catalog. The company was called Regal Greetings and Gifts. They're not around anymore, but it was like gift cards and wrapping paper and things like that. And you'd pick your orders, and then you'd go to the depot, the distribution place, and you'd go pick up what you wanted. So I took the catalog and I started going door to door in the neighborhood, and I would knock on the door. Hi, my name is Tara. Do you have any kids for me to play with? And if they said no, I wanted to have a reason to be there. So I said, would you like to buy some greeting cards? And I would show them the catalog. And I got all these orders as I went around, around the neighborhood. So I think I always enjoyed selling. Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
was
you
a bit
got orders.
manipulative in retrospect, but the
You
time it's
got
not.
orders.
And I got orders, yeah, people because they felt bad, right? Oh, I don't have anyone for this poor little. It's like the kids who sit at the lemonade stand, right? And you're giving them a quarter because oh, look at them. Let's encourage it. Yeah, my lemonade was greeting cards.
I love that. So you
Yeah,
always had that little business. It was just part
it
of your
was in me.
natural abilities. Yeah,
Yeah,
that came
yeah,
out later.
yeah.
Wow. All right. So tell us now more of the journey from the MBA to where you are now.
Right. So I had this job, and I was doing this work all throughout North America. Really enjoyed what I was doing. I really enjoyed getting to know the people. Even the terrible clients were great clients because it was an experience. It was a story to tell. And in 2007, I fell pregnant with my first child and came to my senses and realized I didn't want to be traveling all over North America anymore. I just wanted to be home. I wanted to go home at the end of the day. And so my husband and I moved back to Vancouver, Canada, where I'm originally from, and I started looking for work. My husband was in investment banking, and his company had agreed to move him to Vancouver and set him up so he could start a practice here. And so that's what we did. And there we were. And it was 2008. You may recall 2008, there was a little bit of financial turmoil. And my husband lost his job in a hot minute because
Mm,
he was just starting up this. And now, what are we going to do?
mm,
And I was lamenting my fate to my previous employer, saying, oh man, I'm going to have to go get like a real job, and I'm going to have to go work at a bank or some big company. It's the last thing I want to do is get one of those MBA jobs. And he just said, so you're a smart girl, go sell a project, figure it out. And I'm like, but I was never in sales. I just did the consulting work. And he's like, okay, well, then take one of those terrible jobs. And so I really didn't want one of those terrible jobs. So I had to find a way to start a company because nobody was doing that kind of implementation work here, at least no one that I could find.
mm. And did you seek out help to like you said, I don't know how to do it. Like, how'd you get from there to actually starting?
Well, that person was very helpful to me, but my previous employer, just sort of giving me advice and also having, taught me for 8 years or 7 years. But what I did is I started doing some mystery shopping. And so I would go to trade shows and do mystery shopping on their trade show booths, and then try to get appointments with the leaders of those businesses to give them their results to do the big reveal. Um,
Ah,
it was tough. It was cold calling. It was, I'd call 100 companies. I'd only get through to three. Of the three, two would say yes. Of the two that said yes, only one would actually keep the meeting. And I was going to them. Like they just would say, "Oh no, we're too busy," and I would have driven all that way. And but hey, I got one project, and one led to another, and a company was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So for people who don't know, tell them what mystery shopping is.
Oh, well, mystery shop, we called it mystery benchmarking. And so we would go to the trade show, typically a business to business trade show. I say we because I did this for many years, but then it was me. I should have said I. And I had 20 best practices that I was looking for. 10 of them had to do with the visual experience of the booth, and 10 of them had to do with the sales experience that I had when I approached the booth. And then I would just tell them, I would go to the meeting with the boss and I would say, my intention was to say, here's how you did. But what actually ended up happening was that I would say, so this is the best practice. As someone comes to the booth, they should be actively greeted, for example, not passively greeted. So someone should come to me. And then there are better and worse greetings. So one of the worst greetings, although active is always better, a worse greeting might be hello or how are you or can I help you? Because we are programmed through our experiences to just say, can I help you? No, thank you. Just looking. How are you? I'm fine. Like they aren't real questions. So I'd explain the best practice. I wouldn't even have to tell them how they did. They knew how they did. They would start say, "Oh, I bet my person was, sitting on their BlackBerry because this is back then, looking," or, "Oh, I bet this happened. Oh, I bet that happened." And so all I really had to do was explain the best practices, and it was back to that old experience of mine, the stuff that I knew that was obvious to me. Once they knew it, it was obvious to them as well. But before they knew it, it was, a revelation. And so that's how they would say, well, do you know anything else other than these 20 things? And I would say, oh, yeah, I know lots of things. And we'd start talking about what their real issues were and start solving them.
I love that. So you were serving them
Mhm.
first.
Always, yes.
Serve
I
them.
call I call it the drug dealer sales philosophy, which is, first taste is free. I have since learned that that is the principle of reciprocity, which Dr. Robert Cialdini came up with in 1984 in his book Influence. But at the time, I just thought I was a dealer of information.
I'm in Los Angeles, as I mentioned. They have a lot of frozen yogurt places,
Yeah,
and they always give you a little bit free. Yeah.
first taste is free. You
First
bet.
taste is free. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you had it in you without even knowing.
yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing. I love that. I love that.
yeah.
Now, just this is a little side note, just my curiosity.
Hmm.
All right, so the greetings, don't say hello, don't say how are you doing.
Yeah.
So those
What
were ineffective. What's an example of an effective greeting in that setting?
it's a genuine question. So a genuine question might be, uh, are you familiar with us or our product? Or have you worked with
Oh,
us before? Or if you and that would start the qualification process. But even if you don't want to, if you feel like that's too salesy, you can even say, have you seen anything at the show today that really caught your attention? Just anything that starts a conversation, a genuine conversation, as opposed to those things that we automatically just answer and make it go away.
that's a good tip. That's a
Yeah.
good tip. I mean, for them and for all of us listening right now, yeah, you can
Yeah,
use that in lots of ways
you sure
because
can.
people, in terms of communicating,
Mhm.
because if people are used to hearing this one phrase all the time, it's just tuned out and they give the automatic answer. So
Yeah.
thanks for the tip.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Now, would you say after doing all that and doing the work you have now, do you feel like you have purpose in your work?
Oh, I have purpose in my work. In fact, all I ever wanted was to do the work. I never wanted to start a company. I really enjoy the work. And so I recently accomplished my big, hairy, audacious goal, my personal one, which was to not have to lead this company. I never wanted to run the company. I just wanted to do the work. And so my business partner has taken over leadership of the organization. And as we speak right now, he's in strategic planning for our business. And I'm here talking to you because that's what I like to do. And so I have tons of purpose. My purpose is to generate lifelong relationships and raving fans. And I get to do that every day. I love it.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out for us.
Yeah, worked
that
out
you
for me too.
that you could be here and not doing strategic planning. Although I do like strategic planning, but I'm glad that you're here. Yeah.
I like facilitating strategic planning. So I
Ah,
work with other organizations and help them have a slightly different perspective, perhaps, on the strategy that they're pursuing and the actions that they can take. I love doing that for others. I don't, I just, I've been doing the same thing for a long time. I don't really want to do it for myself.
yeah, yeah. So, do you think you said earlier it wasn't so deliberate? You were talking about your
Mhm.
educational journey, but coming to this point of having purpose, do you think you stumbled across it, or was there any intentionality in it?
I think that that was always in me, that I always wanted to develop those relationships and develop them through helping others. I think that's always been inside me. How I got there, though, I think was pretty lucky.
You were guided by helping others, though.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was. I always liked that. hmm
yeah. It's
And I think
fascinating.
that's part of my family upbringing, my core, and even like our core values in our own family. We help others when we can is one of our core values, which means sometimes you can't, and that's okay. You still have to put your oxygen mask on first, but when you can, you should. And so I think that's always been in me.
Yeah, and that your family has core values. I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it, there's a lot less religion these days, and I certainly have no interest in going into a discussion about religion at all. But what I will say is, in the past, when people were guided by religion, the core values were kind of built in, right? Don't kill other people or covet their wives or any of those things. Like we knew what they were. But today, religion plays a much smaller role in most people's everyday lives. And so we have to replace that with something. If we don't replace it with something, how are kids supposed to know what's important? And how are they supposed to find their purpose if they don't have those sort of lines on the road about how they're supposed to behave?
Yes, yes. I'm resonating with what you're saying because even in my own teaching, I teach that
Mm,
your purpose is inside of you
hmm
and you can express it in a variety of ways.
hmm
And I use this acronym for you, YOU, your
hmm
own uniqueness,
Yeah.
to encapsulate what you talked about, what you demonstrate so beautifully in your life and work. Um, a combination of some one or more of something you love, your passions,
hmm
one or more of your values, like you're talking about, the things that matter to you, one or more of your natural abilities, your gifts, like yours for sales and
Yeah.
arguments, which is really communication.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
using a combination of those, some things, passion, values, natural abilities, in service to your point about helping others. And to me, when you combine those and express it, no matter where you express it, you're in your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd add to that. I think that's very well put, and I would add to that that I would put that emphasis on in service of others.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find a purpose when you're only looking at yourself.
I agree. I agree. All right. So now speaking of purpose, I'm thinking about the woman who's listening to the podcast right now.
Mhm,
And I describe them as high achieving women. And this is what I mean by high achieving. Ambitious in a positive way. Responsible, have always been the responsible one in all the settings.
mhm,
Good at a few things, good at things. They're the ones people come to for advice, guidance in their professional lives, also in their personal lives, family, community, neighborhood, whatever they're doing. Could have a
mhm.
community event and they're asking her about something that she knows nothing about, but they
Yep,
come to her. She's that person. And you say that like you recognize that. You
I do
recognize.
recognize that person. Yep.
So that's what I'm calling the high achieving woman. And now she's like checked all the boxes, got the promotions, did all the things, successful by everybody's measure, but unfulfilled,
Mm,
looking for meaning and purpose.
mhm,
She's the one we're inspiring right now with this conversation.
mhm.
So, with her in mind, what's some thoughts you'd like to share with her where she is in her journey, either from your personal experience or from your professional experience or both?
Well, your question brings to mind a chat I was having last night on WhatsApp. And there is a group of 25 women that I am connected with. They're all business, they happen to be in business. I don't know that that was necessarily part of the selection process, but we play Mahjong, which is a Chinese tile game. Most of them are of Asian descent. I am not. And it's a really complicated game, like really complicated. But what I love about this group of women is that we're there to support each other all the time. And the reason I bring it up is because I was at 10 o'clock last night texting about books and this and that. And somebody else was talking about makeup. And I just said, I don't even wear it. And we just go through this whole thing. But it's just such a supportive, lovely community environment. And so I think once you've reached that pinnacle, or if you're feeling like it's empty or it's not enough, or even if you haven't reached the pinnacle but you're feeling somewhat unfulfilled, I really think that we're social creatures and we have to find others to share that sort of journey and passion with. And you can do it over a tile game or a book club or a community initiative that you're involved with or whatever it is. I really think that that's what kind of gets missed. We get so caught up on measuring success in terms of money or promotions or things that really, I mean, listen, money matters, of course. It matters to people when they don't have it, especially. But there's so much more to it. And so, really, I think if you're feeling a lack of purpose and a lack of passion, it's time to reach out into the community and find a way to be of service. You'll get way more back than you ever put in.
Yes. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Tara, that's wisdom. That is wisdom. Right. So now, before we tell people where they could be in touch with you, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you might want to share? Do you have any thoughts? Like one more thing I want to say, and if you don't, it's okay. But sometimes I give people the opportunity just in case there's something that bubbles up that I didn't think to ask.
Yeah, there is two things. One of them is the most important choice you will make is the person that you decide to spend your life with. So make that choice recognizing that that is the first level of community that you're picking. I think it's really important. You need to have aligned values. If your values aren't aligned, and so that's why you need to know what your values are. Because if you don't know what your own values are, how in the world can you match them against someone else's? So that's one thing. The other thing is when people listen to this story, the way I've just recounted it, it sounds like things were pretty smooth and easy. And they weren't at all. It was really hard. I had horrible postpartum after my first child. I had, we were when we were here in 2008, we were living in my parents' condo. We were fortunate to have a place to live. It was a two-bedroom condo, and there we were with this baby, and no idea what we were going to do for, anything. Um, People go through really hard things too. That's part of the story. And so I think, wherever you are, if you're at the peak or the valley, when you step back 5 years later, it's going to be a completely different place. So it's not all sunshine and happiness all the time. But when you average things out, they can be pretty good.
Yes. I'm glad you didn't let that go. I'm
Mm,
glad you inserted that in there. So I think somebody needs to hear that.
yeah.
Yes. All right. So now where can be people hear more from you and be in touch with you?
Well, I would love them to connect on LinkedIn, Tara Landis. I would love for them to check out my company website, which is bellrock.ca. And we also offer management training in our program, which is online asynchronous, synchronous online class delivered live. The classes run once a month, but every class comes with a one-on-one coaching session. So people learn the tools and the tricks, the things like we were just talking about with the greeting, simple, practical tools, but then they get to speak with a coach a couple of weeks later about how it went for them. And so they can find me in any of those places.
Okay, that sounds good. Tara, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was a delight to talk with you.
Thank you too. I really enjoyed this. Thanks so much.
And okay, everyone, I'd love to hear your response to the episode. just send me a message on the website, the podcast website, leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. Or if you'd rather go on social media, I'm on all the channels, but I spend most of my time on LinkedIn at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. And I'd love to hear your response. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.